Maylord or bride arrived beaten and bruised. The lonely rancher said, "You're coming with me." Few dared to settle so far from the main colony, but Thane did. He had chosen this place for one reason: freedom. The solitude allowed him to live by his own rules, to work the land as he pleased, and to be the master of his small ranch, nestled between jagged rock formations and vast plains of iron-red soil. Thane stood outside his modest dwelling, a combination of metal panels and reinforced glass, scanning the horizon. Today was not like other days. He had been expecting a delivery, but this was different. It wasn't supplies or machinery, it was a person. The shuttle descended slowly, its engine stirring clouds of red dust. Thane squinted against the wind, gripping the straps of his utility bag. When the hatch finally opened, a figure stumbled out. She was small, fragile-looking, and carried the weight of pain in her eyes. Her clothes were worn and torn, her skin had faint bruises, and her movements were hesitant. Thane felt a pang of concern. He had expected a new companion, someone arranged through the colony's mail-order system to keep him company on this lonely frontier. But seeing her like this, so fragile and scared, made his chest tighten. "Are you Mara?" he asked, his voice steady, careful. The woman looked up, her eyes wide and wary. She nodded slightly, unsure if she could trust the stranger before her. Thane extended his hand, not in command but in offer. "I'm Thane. You're coming with me. Don't worry, you're safe now." For a moment, Mara hesitated. She had been taught to be cautious around strangers, to expect harshness, especially after what she had endured on the colony's supply routes. But something in Thane's calm, strong presence made her believe him. Slowly, she reached out and allowed him to guide her to the shuttle's ramp. The journey back to the ranch was quiet, save for the low hum of the hover vehicle. Mara stared out the window at the barren landscape, her mind a mix of fear and curiosity. She had never seen such vastness before, such open spaces untouched by machinery or chaos. On Earth, she had always felt confined, limited by people who expected her to be small, quiet, and obedient. Here, under Thane's watch, there was a strange sense of possibility. When they arrived at the ranch, Thane opened the door to his home and gestured for Mara to step inside. The interior was simple but functional. Solar panels lined the walls, small hydroponic beds grew food, and shelves were stacked with tools and supplies. Despite the simplicity, there was warmth, an order and care that spoke of someone who had built this life with his own hands. "You can rest here," Thane said, pointing to a small bedroom. "I'll make some food. You need strength." Mara nodded, her body slumping with exhaustion. As soon as she closed the door, she sank onto the bed and let the weight of the past weeks settle over her. The bruises on her arms and legs throbbed, but the ache in her heart was heavier. She had been treated as a commodity, moved from place to place, and left to fend for herself in ways she didn't fully understand. Now, for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of relief. Thane, meanwhile, prepared a simple meal: rehydrated vegetables, a portion of cultured protein, and water filtered through his purifier. He worked silently, respecting her need for space, but his mind was already planning how to help her adapt to life here. He had seen resilience before, in the colony settlers who had survived sandstorms, power failures, and hostile wildlife. Mara's eyes held that same spark, quiet, hesitant, but alive. When he set the meal on the small table, Mara emerged from her room, her steps careful. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. Thane nodded. "Eat first, then we'll talk." The food tasted strange but nourishing. Mara ate slowly, savoring each bite, realizing her body had gone too long without proper care. As she finished, she looked up at Thane. I don't know what to do now." Thane smiled faintly. "First, you rest. Tomorrow, you'll learn the ways of the ranch. It's not easy, but it's honest work. You'll see what humans can do when they use their minds and hearts." Mara stared at him, unsure what he meant. But there was a certainty in his words, a quiet strength that made her believe she could survive this new life. That night, the two slept in their separate rooms. The wind howled outside, stirring the red dust into small tornadoes that danced across the plains. Mara, lying in the unfamiliar bed, thought about the life she had left behind, the cold corridors of supply stations, the harsh voices, the fear. Here, under Thane's protection, she felt the beginnings of something new: safety, trust, and maybe even friendship. The next morning, Thane woke before dawn. He checked the solar panels and the livestock, making sure everything was in order. By the time Mara emerged, yawning and stretching, the first rays of the Martian sun lit the horizon in shades of pink and gold. "Ready?" he asked. Mara nodded, determined to show she could handle whatever came next. "Yes." They stepped outside. The ranch was small but well kept, with a few domed enclosures for livestock and a greenhouse tucked into the side of a hill. The air was thin and dry, but each breath felt full of possibility. Thane showed Mara how to check the water filters, feed the animals, and tend the hydroponic plants. She listened carefully, asking questions and learning quickly. Despite her past hardships, she had an innate sense of observation and problem-solving, noticing small details others might miss. By midday, Mara was moving with more confidence. She carried supplies, tended the livestock, and even suggested a small adjustment to the irrigation system that made it run more efficiently. Thane raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Not bad," he said. "You'll fit in here faster than I expected." Mara smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she realized that human beings were capable of more than survival. They could innovate, adapt, and thrive, even in the harshest conditions. As evening fell, they sat outside, watching the twin suns dip below the horizon. The sky turned shades of violet and deep orange, and the stars began to peek out, shining brighter than any she had ever seen from Earth. Thane handed her a small cup of water. "It's a hard life here," he said, "but it's honest, and it's ours to shape." Mara took a sip, letting the quiet settle over her. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she belonged somewhere. She glanced at Thane and saw not just a rancher, but a man who had survived alone, who had built something meaningful from nothing, and who believed in the strength of people. That night, as the Martian wind sang softly against the walls, Mara made a silent promise to herself. She would learn, she would grow, and she would prove that she could endure and thrive. With Thane's guidance and her own determination, she knew she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. And on the red plains of Mars, under the endless sky, two humans, one lonely, one broken, had begun to forge a partnership that neither had expected but both would come to rely on. The morning sun rose over the red Martian plains, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks. The wind was calm today, carrying only the faint scent of iron dust across the ranch. Mara stepped outside, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs. She had slept better last night than she had in weeks, the quiet comfort of the ranch giving her a sense of safety she had never known before. Thane was already up, moving among the livestock and checking the water systems. The animals, a small herd of engineered oxen and a few hardy sheep, were surprisingly lively. Their fur shimmered faintly in the sunlight, specially adapted to withstand the planet's harsh radiation and cold nights. Thane moved with careful efficiency, his hands skilled from years of working with both animals and machinery. "Good morning," he called without turning. "Good morning," Mara replied. She adjusted her sleeves and walked toward him, determined to start learning. She had spent her life surviving, but surviving meant little here. She wanted to contribute to earn her place. Thane looked her over and nodded. "Today, you'll start with the animals. They need feeding and checking. Mistakes can be costly here, so pay attention." Mara swallowed her nerves and followed him. They walked toward the herd, the soft crunch of red dust under their boots. Thane showed her how to inspect the oxen for signs of stress or illness, pointing out the small changes in their breathing, posture, and even the way their eyes reflected the sunlight. Mara listened intently, absorbing every detail. "You have a good eye," Thane said after she correctly identified a minor issue with one of the younger oxen. "Most newcomers overlook that. You notice things." Mara's chest swelled slightly with pride. It was a small compliment, but it mattered more than anything. For the first time, someone had recognized her ability instead of her past misfortunes. After feeding and checking the animals, Thane led Mara to the greenhouse, a small dome tucked against a rocky hill. Inside, rows of hydroponic plants thrived under artificial lights, their leaves bright and healthy. Mara had never worked with anything like this before, but Thane explained the principles simply: water flow, nutrients, sunlight cycles, and temperature control. Mara's hands moved cautiously at first, adjusting valves and inspecting roots. But soon, her confidence grew. She suggested moving a tray of seedlings closer to the lights to prevent stretching, and Thane gave a rare approving smile. "You're learning fast," he said. "The frontier rewards those who think and adapt." Mara felt a warmth in her chest. She had survived harsh conditions before, but here, survival meant more than endurance. It meant understanding, planning, and using her mind to shape her environment. By midday, the sun was high and the temperature rising. Thane led Mara to the solar array, a cluster of panels that powered the ranch. He explained how to monitor energy levels, clean the surfaces, and troubleshoot common malfunctions. Mara marveled at how humans had designed technology to thrive in an environment that seemed hostile to life itself. "You see," Thane said, "humans are adaptable. We take what nature gives us and make it work for us. That's what keeps us alive out here." Mara nodded, absorbing his words. She had always thought of humans as fragile, weak, and dependent on others. But here, she saw strength in resilience, intelligence, and cooperation. After lunch, a simple meal of rehydrated vegetables and protein bars, they turned to more physical tasks. Thane had built a small water collection system that gathered condensation from the thin Martian atmosphere. It required maintenance and careful monitoring, and he wanted Mara to understand the importance of every drop. As they worked, Mara stumbled over a valve, almost spilling collected water. Thane caught her hand. "Careful," he said gently. "Every mistake matters here, but learning from it matters more." Mara smiled sheepishly. "I'll try again." "Good, that's the spirit." Hours passed as they moved between tasks, tending animals, checking systems, repairing fences, and monitoring energy storage. Mara's muscles ached, but there was a deep satisfaction in the work. For the first time, she felt the value of her efforts. Each task, no matter how small, was essential. Each success was proof that humans could survive and thrive in even the harshest places. As evening approached, Thane decided it was time for a practical test. "We'll take the rover and map the northern pasture. The terrain there is tricky, and it's important to know the land around the ranch." Mara's heart quickened. She had never driven a rover before, and the thought of navigating unfamiliar terrain was intimidating. But she had learned to trust herself, and to trust Thane's guidance. They climbed into the small rover, a rugged vehicle built to handle rocky surfaces and dust storms. Thane showed her the controls, explaining speed, terrain response, and communication systems. Mara listened, memorized the instructions, and then took the wheel under his watchful eye. The first few minutes were tense. The rover bounced over rocks, the tires skidding on loose soil. Mara's hands gripped the controls, her knuckles white. Thane's calm voice guided her. "Slow down on the slope. Watch the shadows, they hide dips." Gradually, Mara's confidence grew. She learned to anticipate the terrain, to use the rover's sensors to detect hazards, and to adjust her path smoothly. Thane observed quietly, occasionally offering small corrections, but largely allowing her to discover solutions herself. When they reached the northern pasture, Mara's eyes widened. The landscape was breathtaking: jagged cliffs, red dunes stretching into the distance, and a small valley where rare Martian plants thrived. She felt a thrill of accomplishment. Not only had she navigated the terrain, but she had begun to understand the land in a way she never imagined possible. "You did well," Thane said, smiling. "You're thinking like a frontier survivor now." Mara smiled, the first genuine smile in a long time. She felt capable, useful, and alive. On the way back, they spotted a small dust cloud on the horizon. Mara tensed. "What is that?" Thane squinted. "Could be a storm or a moving vehicle. Either way, we'll need to watch it." For the first time, Mara understood that the frontier was not just about work. It was about awareness, caution, and readiness. Humans had survived on this planet not by avoiding challenges, but by anticipating them, preparing for them, and using intelligence and skill to overcome them. Back at the ranch, they secured the livestock, checked the energy reserves, and reinforced the water collection systems. Mara moved with purpose, her confidence growing with every task. Thane watched her, silently impressed by her adaptability and determination. As night fell, the twin suns dipped below the horizon, and the sky turned deep purple, dotted with stars brighter than any on Earth. Mara and Thane sat outside, sharing a quiet meal. "You've changed a lot in one day," Thane said. Mara laughed softly. "I feel stronger, maybe even capable of more than I thought." "That's the point," Thane said. "Here we don't just survive, we learn, adapt, and grow. We become more than we were before. That's what humans do." Mara looked up at the stars, feeling a new sense of purpose. She had come to Mars scared and unsure, but she was beginning to see herself differently. She had skills, intelligence, and courage she never realized she possessed. And with Thane's guidance, she was ready to face whatever challenges the frontier would throw at her. The wind whispered through the plains, carrying the faint sound of shifting dust and distant rocks. Mara felt a connection to the land, to Thane, and to something larger than herself. Life on the frontier was not easy, but it was honest. It was real, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. Before sleep claimed her, Mara made another promise. She would learn everything she could, she would grow stronger, and she would prove that humans, resilient, clever, and determined, could thrive anywhere, even on the harsh, red plains of Mars. And so, as the Martian night wrapped around the ranch in deep violet and silver, two humans, one experienced, one learning, prepared to face the next day together as partners in survival and growth. The Martian morning was quiet, almost unnaturally so. The sun barely pierced the horizon, casting long shadows across the red plains. Mara stepped outside, rubbing her hands together to warm them against the chill. Life on the frontier was always demanding, and she was ready for another day of learning and work. Thane was already at the northern fence inspecting the boundary posts. He glanced at Mara and nodded. "Ready for another lesson?" Mara smiled faintly. "Yes. What are we doing today?" "Today, you'll learn about threats that come not from nature but from machines." The colony sends automated drones to survey the land and mine minerals. Most are harmless, but occasionally one malfunctions. Knowing how to handle them is part of survival. Mara frowned. Machines that could be dangerous. She had worked with simple robotics before, but nothing like this. Thane led her to a small control hub at the edge of the ranch. Screens flickered with data from nearby drones and sensors. "See that?" he said, pointing to one blinking red light on the monitor. "That's a rogue drone. It's not supposed to be in this area. If it continues moving this way, it could damage the livestock or our equipment." Mara's stomach tightened. She had never imagined a machine could be a real threat. "What do we do?" she asked. "First, we observe. Then we plan. Human brains are better than any machine when it comes to strategy and problem solving. That's why we survive out here." Mara nodded, determined to learn. They climbed into the rover, its tires crunching against the red dust. Thane guided her to a vantage point where they could track the drone safely. The machine was small but powerful, its sensors scanning everything as it moved erratically. Notice its pattern, Thane instructed. Machines follow logic, even malfunctioning ones. If you watch carefully, you can predict where it will go next. Mara studied the drone, her mind racing. She noticed that it hesitated near the rocks and slowed when it approached uneven terrain. She pointed this out to Thane. It's avoiding obstacles, but it doesn't understand soft soil well. That might slow it down if we lead it there. Thane nodded, impressed. Good observation. That's the first step, using our understanding to gain an advantage. For the next hour, Mara and Thane carefully maneuvered the rover, creating small diversions and guiding the drone toward the soft soil near the northern dunes. Mara suggested using reflective panels to confuse its sensors, a technique she had read about in her training manuals but never applied. "Let's try it," Thane said, smiling faintly. They set up panels on the ground, angling them to reflect the weak sunlight into the drone's sensors. The machine slowed, its movements jerky and unpredictable. Mara felt a thrill of accomplishment. Humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of solving problems no machine could fully anticipate. "Now we need to trap it," Thane said. He led her to a small trench they had dug months ago for emergencies. "The goal isn't to destroy it, just to contain it until we can safely deactivate it." Mara nodded, her hands steady. They guided the drone toward the trench. At the last moment, the machine stumbled over the soft soil and fell into the pit. Mara exhaled, heart racing. "We did it," she whispered. Thane clapped her shoulder. "Yes, you used your mind, not force. That's what humans do best." They worked together to secure the drone, using cables and a portable control device to deactivate its systems. Mara marveled at how humans could outthink machines, even when the machines were designed to be efficient and strong. It was a lesson in ingenuity, patience, and observation. After the drone was safely contained, Thane suggested they check the northern fence. "It's not enough to deal with one problem. Out here, you have to anticipate the next." Mara followed him across the dunes, her boots sinking slightly into the soft soil. They inspected posts, repaired small breaks, and reinforced weak points. Mara suggested placing additional sensors to alert them if another drone or any unexpected visitor approached. Thane agreed. "You're thinking ahead now," he said. "That's the difference between surviving and thriving. Humans aren't just strong or fast. We can plan, adapt, and learn." By midday, the sun was high and the temperature rising. Mara felt the sweat on her brow and the strain in her muscles, but there was a deep satisfaction in the work. Each problem they solved, each obstacle they overcame, reminded her why humans had survived on planets and worlds that seemed impossible to live on. They returned to the ranch for a brief lunch. Mara ate quickly, energy returning with each bite. Thane watched her, noting how she had changed since her arrival. She was no longer timid or fearful. She was alert, confident, and capable. After eating, Thane suggested another practical lesson: navigating the rocky hills east of the ranch to locate potential water collection points. Mara felt a thrill of excitement. Exploration was risky, but it was also a chance to apply everything she had learned. They packed supplies into the rover and set off. Mara drove carefully, remembering the lessons from the northern pasture. Thane guided her, pointing out subtle signs in the terrain that indicated soft soil, hidden crevices, or mineral deposits. Mara quickly noticed patterns, predicting where to slow down or accelerate, where to avoid hazards, and how to make the rover move efficiently. Hours passed as they explored, mapping the hills and identifying spots for water collection and solar arrays. Mara's confidence grew with each successful maneuver. She realized that humans were uniquely capable of adapting to unknown conditions, using intelligence, creativity, and teamwork to survive and even thrive. As the day drew to a close, they returned to the ranch. The sun dipped behind the horizon, and shadows stretched long across the red plains. Mara was tired but exhilarated. She had faced her first real challenge on the frontier and had succeeded, not with brute strength, but with careful observation, planning, and courage. Thane watched her with quiet pride. "You've done well today. Not many newcomers could handle a rogue drone, navigate the terrain, and suggest improvements to the ranch all in one day." Mara smiled, feeling a surge of accomplishment. I didn't know I could do this. But I feel like I belong here now, like I can actually help." "That's because you can," Thane said. "Humans are stronger than they realize. We survive by thinking, adapting, and never giving up. And you've shown all of that today." That night, as the twin suns set completely and the stars sparkled overhead, Mara lay in bed reflecting on the day. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, and she had come out stronger. The frontier was harsh, but it was also full of opportunities to grow, to learn, and to prove herself. She realized that life on Mars was not just about surviving. It was about understanding the land, the machines, and even herself. She had discovered skills she never knew she had: observation, problem-solving, patience, and courage. And she knew that with Thane's guidance, she could continue to grow, to thrive, and to face even greater challenges. Outside, the wind whispered across the plains, carrying the faint echoes of distant rocks shifting and dust swirling. Mara felt a connection to the land, to Thane, and to something larger than herself. Humans were capable of incredible things, resilient, inventive, and strong. And she was becoming a part of that story. Before sleep claimed her, Mara made a quiet promise. She would continue to learn, continue to grow, and continue to prove that humans, clever, determined, and adaptable, could survive and thrive anywhere, even on a world as harsh as Mars. And so, under the vast Martian sky, two humans, one experienced, one learning, prepared for the future. They knew challenges awaited them, but together, they were ready to face whatever the frontier would throw their way. The morning dawned cold and crisp over the Martian plains. The sky glowed a pale orange, and the wind carried the faint scent of iron dust. Mara woke early, eager to continue learning and helping on the ranch. Each day brought new lessons, and she had discovered a growing sense of confidence and belonging. Thane was already outside, checking the livestock. The engineered oxen and hardy sheep moved across the plains, their coats glinting under the weak sunlight. Thane's hands moved quickly, skilled from years of practice, adjusting water supplies and reinforcing fences. "Morning," Mara called as she stepped outside, pulling her jacket tighter against the chill. "Morning," Thane replied, nodding. "Today, we test more than your skills. We test your ability to work with me, to think fast, and to adapt. Out here, teamwork matters as much as strength." Mara's heart quickened. She had faced challenges alone, but this was different. She had to trust another person fully and act together. It was a lesson in partnership as much as survival. Thane led her to the eastern hills, a rugged region of rocks and cliffs. He explained the plan. They were going to inspect a potential water source, a small underground spring that could provide life-saving reserves for the ranch. It was in a difficult location, and accessing it required both skill and strategy. "Stay close," Thane instructed. "The terrain is tricky, and one wrong step could be dangerous." Mara nodded, following carefully. The rocks were sharp and uneven, and her boots slipped occasionally on loose soil. Thane moved confidently, but he frequently glanced back to ensure she was keeping up. As they neared the spring, a sudden rumble shook the ground. Mara stumbled, catching herself on a nearby rock. "What was that?" she asked, alarmed. Thane squinted at the horizon. "Could be a small landslide or shifting soil. This terrain is unpredictable. We'll need to be careful." They proceeded cautiously, stepping over loose rocks and avoiding unstable ground. Mara's hands were sore from gripping the rover handles and climbing, but she pressed on, determined to succeed. Each step was a lesson in observation and patience. Humans survived on Mars not by brute force, but by understanding their environment and adapting to it. When they reached the spring, Mara gasped. Water trickled faintly from beneath the rocks, clear and cold despite the harsh environment. Thane smiled. This is it. With careful collection and storage, it could support the ranch through dry periods. Mara bent down, cupping her hands in the water. The cold shocked her, but it also filled her with hope. Even in a world so harsh, humans had the ingenuity to find life, to harness resources, and to thrive. Suddenly, a low creaking sound echoed through the rocks. Mara froze. What now? Thane scanned the area. The rocks above are unstable. We need to move carefully or the spring could be blocked, or worse. They worked together, removing loose stones and reinforcing weak points with support beams Thane carried. Mara followed his instructions, but she also made her own observations, suggesting ways to brace certain rocks more effectively. Thane listened and implemented her ideas, a rare show of trust. Not bad, he said, clapping her shoulder gently. You're learning to think like a frontier partner, not just a helper. Mara's chest swelled with pride. She realized that humans were capable of more than she had imagined, not just surviving, but analyzing, planning, and solving problems as a team. Hours passed as they secured the spring and mapped the area for future use. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the plains. Mara's arms ached from lifting and supporting rocks, but she felt satisfaction in her hard work. Every task reinforced the idea that humans were strong not only physically, but mentally and creatively. On their way back, Thane spotted something unusual. Look at that dust cloud, he said, pointing to the horizon. It's moving faster than a natural wind. Could be another rogue drone or a vehicle. Either way, we need to be ready. Mara's heart raced. She had faced the drone once before, but this time the situation felt more serious. Thane handed her a handheld scanner. Monitor its approach. Tell me what you see. Mara studied the scanner carefully, noting patterns in movement and speed. It's coming from the southeast. Speed is consistent, not random. Could be a supply rover on autopilot. Good. Stay calm. Observation first, reaction second. Humans survive by using their minds before their muscles. They positioned themselves on a ridge, observing the approaching object. As it drew nearer, Mara realized it was a maintenance drone, similar to the one they had contained previously, but larger and more complex. Its sensors scanned the area, unaware of the humans above. Think fast, Thane said. We can't let it reach the livestock or equipment. We need to divert it. Mara's mind raced. She remembered the reflective panel trick from before but knew they needed something stronger for a larger drone. She spotted a pile of metal debris near the ridge. We can use these panels and mirrors to confuse its sensors, she suggested. If we angle them right, it will slow down. Thane nodded approvingly. Good, let's do it. They worked quickly, positioning the panels to reflect sunlight into the drone's sensors. The machine slowed, jerking as it tried to process conflicting signals. Mara felt a surge of excitement. Humans were clever, adaptive, and capable of solving problems no machine could fully understand. Now, Thane said, we guide it into the soft soil near the valley. That will stop it safely without damage. Mara carefully maneuvered the rover, leading the drone toward the designated trap. Her hands were steady, her mind focused. She anticipated the drone's movements, adjusting panels and positioning to keep it on the intended path. The drone stumbled over the soft soil, finally tipping into a small pit they had prepared. Mara exhaled, feeling a rush of triumph. We did it, she whispered. Thane clapped her shoulder. Yes. You're learning not just to survive, but to think ahead, adapt, and work with me as a team. That's what humans do best. They worked together to secure the drone, ensuring it could not harm the ranch. Mara marveled at how human creativity and intelligence could outmatch even advanced machines. She realized that humans had survived countless challenges not because they were the strongest, but because they were resourceful, observant, and cooperative. As the sun began to set, casting a warm red glow over the plains, Mara and Thane returned to the ranch. Their bodies were tired, but their spirits were high. They had faced danger, worked together, and emerged stronger. That evening, as they sat outside, sharing a simple meal, Mara felt a deep sense of connection, not just to Thane, but to the planet and to humanity itself. Humans were capable of incredible things: endurance, problem-solving, and courage. And she was becoming a part of that story. Thane looked at her with quiet pride. "You've come far in a short time, not just in skill, but in thinking like a human survivor. Out here, that's more important than anything else." Mara smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. "I've learned a lot, but I know there's still so much to do. I want to keep learning, keep growing." "That's the spirit," Thane said. "The frontier never stops testing us, but with each challenge we grow stronger, smarter, and more capable, and we do it together." As night fell and the twin suns disappeared behind the distant cliffs, Mara lay in her bed reflecting on the day. She had faced danger, uncertainty, and fear, and she had prevailed. The frontier was harsh, but it was also full of opportunities for growth, learning, and proving oneself. She realized that life on Mars was not just about survival, it was about trust, teamwork, and resilience. She had discovered new strengths within herself and had formed a bond with Thane, one built on respect, cooperation, and shared challenges. Before sleep claimed her, Mara made a promise. She would continue to grow, to learn, and to prove that humans, intelligent, adaptable, and resilient, could thrive even in the harshest environments. And so, under the Martian sky, two humans, one experienced, one learning, strengthened their bond through challenges and triumphs, preparing for whatever trials the frontier might throw at them next. The Martian dawn was pale, the sky tinged with soft oranges and purples. The plains glimmered faintly under the light of the rising twin suns, and a cool wind whispered across the ranch. Mara stretched and took a deep breath. Life on the frontier had changed her in ways she could never have imagined. Thane was already outside, checking the livestock and the solar panels. His movements were precise, practiced, and confident, a result of years spent surviving in this harsh world. He glanced at Mara as she stepped out. "Ready for another day?" "Ready," Mara replied, her voice steady and strong. Today was different. They had received signals from the colony indicating that a severe dust storm was forming to the north, moving faster than expected. The storm could reach the ranch within hours, threatening the livestock, the crops, and their equipment. But Mara felt no fear. She had learned to face uncertainty, to think fast, and to act decisively. "Looks like we'll have a real test today," Thane said. "The storm will hit hard. We'll need to secure everything and quickly." Mara nodded. "Where do we start?" "Animals first," Thane said. "They're most vulnerable. Then equipment and the water systems. Timing and teamwork are everything." Together, they worked with careful efficiency. Mara helped herd the livestock into reinforced pens. The oxen and sheep moved calmly under her guidance, responding to her gestures and voice. She had learned the animals' behaviors, their fears, and their patterns, and used that knowledge to lead them safely. Thane checked the solar arrays, covering delicate panels and securing the wiring. "Good," he said. "Keep an eye on the wind patterns. It will shift unexpectedly." Mara adjusted barriers and added extra weight to the water tanks to prevent them from toppling. Each action was deliberate, planned, and executed with care. Humans thrived in challenges like this, not through raw power, but through intelligence, foresight, and teamwork. As the storm approached, the wind picked up, stirring red dust into small whirlwinds that danced across the plains. Visibility dropped, and the temperature plummeted. Mara stayed close to Thane, moving with precision to secure the remaining structures. "Almost there," Thane said, his voice firm. The storm will test us, but it won't break us. Humans survive by planning, adapting, and supporting each other. Mara felt a surge of pride. She realized how far she had come, from a scared and battered newcomer to a capable, confident frontier partner. She was not just surviving, she was thriving. The first gusts of the storm hit, rattling the panels and sending dust swirling around them. Mara and Thane huddled behind a reinforced wall, shouting instructions to each other. They adjusted braces, tightened cables, and reinforced the livestock pens. The storm was fierce, but their preparation and teamwork held strong. At one point, a section of fencing threatened to collapse under the wind. Mara acted instinctively, bracing it with a heavy beam while Thane reinforced it from the other side. Their movements were coordinated, a dance of trust and skill honed through weeks of shared work and learning. When the storm finally began to subside hours later, the ranch stood intact. The livestock was safe, the water system secure, and the solar panels had survived with minimal damage. Mara and Thane stepped outside, exhausted but triumphant. "You did well," Thane said, clapping her shoulder. "Not just today, but all week. You've learned to think, to adapt, and to work as part of a team. That's what humans do best, survive and thrive in the face of impossible odds." Mara smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She looked around at the red plains stretching endlessly into the horizon. Life on Mars was harsh, but it was honest and real. Humans had built this life with determination, intelligence, and resilience, and she was now a part of it. As they returned to the ranch house, Mara noticed how small changes had made a big difference. Reinforced panels, carefully placed sensors, and well-secured structures had protected them. She understood now that survival was about observation, planning, and using knowledge to overcome challenges. That evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and the sky turned deep violet, Mara and Thane sat outside, sharing a quiet meal. The wind was calm, carrying the faint scent of dust and minerals. The ranch was safe, the animals content, and the equipment intact. "You've changed a lot," Thane said, watching her eat. "When you arrived, you were afraid and unsure. Now you're strong, capable, and confident." Mara laughed softly. "I feel like a different person. I've learned more than I imagined, and I've realized that humans can adapt to anything if we use our minds and work together." "That's true," Thane said. "Out here, survival isn't about fighting or strength. It's about intelligence, creativity, and courage. And you've shown all of those qualities." Mara looked at him, realizing how much she respected him, not just for his skills, but for his patience, wisdom, and ability to trust her. She had found more than safety on Mars. She had found a partner, someone who believed in her and allowed her to grow. The days that followed were filled with routine, but also with small triumphs. Mara refined her skills in animal care, equipment maintenance, and land management. She learned to anticipate problems, to adjust quickly, and to make decisions under pressure. She discovered that humans were capable of incredible things when they combined intelligence, skill, and courage. Thane watched her progress with quiet pride. Mara had gone from a frightened newcomer to an indispensable partner. She had learned the value of observation, the power of planning, and the strength of trust. Humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, problem solvers, and creators of their own destiny. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a brilliant shade of crimson, Mara and Thane stood on a ridge overlooking the ranch. The plain stretched endlessly, dotted with rocks, dunes, and distant cliffs. "This land is harsh," Thane said, "but it's also beautiful. And humans, we can thrive here. That's what makes us strong." Mara nodded, feeling the truth of his words. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, but she had also discovered her own strength. She was capable, resilient, and adaptable. Humans could overcome even the harshest challenges with courage, intelligence, and determination. "I'm ready," Mara said quietly. "Ready to face whatever comes next. With you and with everything I've learned, I know we can handle it." Thane smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. "That's good. Out here you have to be ready for anything. But with trust, skill, and determination, humans can do more than survive, we can thrive." As night fell, they returned to the ranch house. The stars above were brighter than any on Earth, shining across the endless Martian plains. Mara felt a deep connection to the land, to Thane, and to the human spirit. Humans had survived on countless worlds through ingenuity, resilience, and courage. And she was now a part of that story. Before sleep claimed her, Mara made a promise. She would continue to grow, continue to learn, and continue to prove that humans, clever, determined, and resourceful, could thrive anywhere, even in the harshest conditions. The Martian night was quiet, save for the faint whisper of wind across the plains. Mara and Thane had faced challenges, adapted, and succeeded. Their bond had grown stronger, forged through shared work, trust, and the triumphs of the frontier. And in that quiet moment, Mara realized that this was only the beginning. The red plains of Mars were vast, full of unknowns and possibilities. Humans were capable of incredible things, and together they would continue to explore, to survive, and to thrive. Mara looked at Thane and smiled. "This is home now," she said softly. "It is," Thane replied, "and we'll make it stronger together." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of iron dust and distant rock. The stars twinkled above, and the twin suns promised another day of challenge and opportunity. Mara felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She had found safety, trust, and purpose. She had discovered the true strength of humans, the ability to adapt, to endure, and to rise above any challenge. And as the Martian night wrapped around the ranch, two humans, one seasoned, one transformed, looked toward the horizon, ready to face the future together, confident in their skills, their courage, and their unbreakable human spirit.